The air was thick with the smell of new beginnings. Fresh paint, lemon thyme from the caterers, the low hum of happy voices filling the space I had built from nothing. My bungalow. For the first time in 9 years, I felt the tight knot of anxiety in my shoulders finally loosen. This was it. This was the piece I had worked for. 9 years of saying no to vacations. 9 years of driving a car with a spiderweb crack across the windshield. 9 years of packing my own lunch while my co-workers ordered out. All for this moment. My friend Chloe tapped the glass on a large framed document standing on an easel by the door. It was the architectural blueprint, my name printed in the corner. "You actually did it, Sarah," she whispered, her voice full of awe. "You built your dream." I felt a smile spread across my face, a real bone-deep smile. I did. Then the doorbell rang. I froze. Everyone I had invited was already here. I opened the door to the cool night air, and my smile dissolved. It was my entire family. My parents, my older brother Mark, his wife Karen, and their 2 kids. And they were carrying suitcases. My mother pushed past me without a word. Her eyes darted around my living room, not with pride, but with a cold, calculating assessment. My father followed, his face a thundercloud. Mark herded his family inside, their heavy luggage thumping against my perfect, freshly painted walls, leaving dark, ugly scuffs in their wake. The laughter in the room sputtered and died. I turned. My friends were statues, champagne flutes held halfway to their lips. The silence was a physical weight, pressing down on all of us. I could feel the party atmosphere evaporate, replaced by a thick, awkward tension. My mother finally turned to me, her voice as sharp as broken glass. "Well, this is it?" I blinked, my mind struggling to catch up. "Mom? What are you doing here?" "I didn't know you were coming." "Of course we're here," my father's voice boomed, making me flinch. He gestured dramatically towards Mark and his family, who were standing, awkwardly by the custom oak bookshelf I'd saved for a year to buy. "Your brother lost his lease. They have nowhere else to go." Ice flooded my veins. This wasn't a surprise visit. It was an ambush. Mark refused to meet my eyes. Karen was busy inspecting a throw pillow, her mouth twisted in a look of profound disapproval, as if my home wasn't good enough for her predicament. My mother's voice rose, becoming theatrical. She wanted my friends, my new neighbors, to hear every word. "We drove 3 hours to get here. The children are exhausted." She pointed a perfectly manicured finger down the hallway. "So, where are you putting them? The guest room? The finished basement?" Her voice hit a crescendo, a shriek of pure entitlement. "Where do we stay?" Every eye in the room drilled into me. Pity, judgment, curiosity. My moment of triumph had been twisted into a public execution. I looked past them, at the blueprint on its easel. My name. My dream. I took one, a steadying breath. The scent of lemon thyme was suddenly nauseating. I looked at my mother's furious face, my brother's cowardly stare, and the black scuff marks on my wall. A cold, hard resolve solidified in my spine. I held their gaze. All of them. Not under my roof. The stunned silence that followed my words was a memory burned into my mind. But deep down, it wasn't a surprise. This was a pattern, just played out on a much grander scale. I remembered a family dinner 2 years ago. I'd just hit my $50,000 savings goal, a huge milestone. When I told my parents, my dad didn't even look at me. He clapped my brother Mark on the shoulder. "Hear that, son? Your sister is building a nest egg for the whole family." Everyone laughed. But he wasn't joking. Then there was the memory from just 6 months ago. Mark pulled up in a brand new SUV he couldn't afford, smirking at my 10-year-old sedan. "Still driving this thing, Sarah?" he'd said, shaking his head. "All that being frugal will just turn you bitter." A week later, my phone rang. It was him. He needed help making his first car payment. When I said no, my mother called me selfish. It was always this way. My hard work was their safety net. My savings were their emergency fund. My future was just their backup plan. The day after the disastrous housewarming party, the mail arrived. Tucked inside a pile of junk mail was a thick, yellowed envelope from the county tax assessor. My hands trembled as I tore it open. The number I saw made my blood run cold. The property taxes were nearly double the initial estimate. It was a crippling amount, an impossible amount due in 60 days. The small financial cushion I'd carefully saved for emergencies like this? It was gone. I sank onto a stray moving box, the threatening letter shaking in my hand. My house, my sanctuary, suddenly felt like a cage of my own making, with walls of debt closing in. On my laptop screen, a complex architectural rendering for the coastal villa project was open. It was a massive freelance contract, the one that got me over the finish line. Just then, an email popped up. The subject line was a punch to the gut. Deadline moved up. They needed everything in 3 weeks, not 6. The pressure was suffocating. My phone buzzed, vibrating against the wooden box. I looked down, my heart pounding in my chest. It was a text from my mother. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even a question. It was a command. We need to talk. Now, they didn't knock. An hour after the text, the front door just opened, and they were standing there. No brother, no sister-in-law. Just my parents. Their faces carved from stone. My mother launched her campaign before the door even clicked shut. You humiliated us, Sarah. You humiliated your brother, in front of all your new friends. You showed up with suitcases, Mom, I said, my voice quiet. My hands gripped the edge of the new kitchen island, knuckles white. The massive, unopened tax bill lay face down just inches from my fingers, a secret, crushing weight. You put me in an impossible position. He lost his job, my father said, his voice a low, accusatory rumble. His landlord is evicting them. What was he supposed to do? Let his children sleep on the street? My chest tightened. He's had months to find a new job or a smaller apartment. This didn't just happen overnight. Suddenly, my mother's expression softened. The hard lines around her mouth disappeared. She stepped closer, placing a cool hand on my arm. It was a familiar tactic. The false hope. Honey, I know this is a lot to ask, she cooed, her voice dripping with manufactured sympathy. But look at this place. It's huge. You have 4 bedrooms. 4. What does one person need with 4 bedrooms? I felt the old guilt rising in my throat, the familiar urge to just give in, to make the peace, to be the good daughter. It would just be for a little while, she whispered. Until he's back on his feet. For a second, I almost believed her. I almost caved. But then I heard it. A faint, rhythmic clicking. I looked past her and saw my father, leaning against my counter. He was impatiently jangling his car keys, a nervous, irritated rhythm that screamed, "Let's get this over with." They weren't here to ask. They were here to win. The spell broke. I pulled my arm away. Her hand fell to her side. "No," I said. My voice shook, but it was firm. "I can't. This house. I can't afford to take on 4 more people." The softness in my mother's face vanished. It was like a mask dropping. Venom filled her eyes. "Afford it? We're family. You don't charge family." Her voice climbed, becoming a shrill accusation. "After everything we've done for you, you have always been so selfish." The shouting started then, their voices echoing off the high ceilings, filling my beautiful, peaceful house with their poison. After they stormed out, I saw my neighbor, Carol, tending her rose bushes. 10 minutes later, she was at my door, holding a lemon meringue pie. Sounded rough, she said gently. "I was the HOA president here for years. You learn to recognize the sound of a boundary dispute." She gave me a small, knowing smile. "You have a lovely home. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty for it." Her kindness was a lifeline. But as my parents' car peeled out of my driveway, my father leaned out the window. His face was a twisted mask of rage. His final words hung in the air, a chilling promise. "You'll regret this. We know how to handle ungrateful children." The attack came 2 days later. It wasn't a shouting match. It was a digital whisper campaign, designed for maximum humiliation. My cousin was the one who sent me the screenshot. It was from our extended family's church community email chain. The sender was my mother. It didn't mention me by name. It was far more clever than that. A humble request for prayers, it began, for our son Mark and his young family. Through no fault of their own, they find themselves without a home. I could feel the venom dripping from every word. It is a heavy burden when those with more than enough close their doors and their hearts. Please pray for a softening of hearts. The implication was a dagger, sharp and precise. I was the one with the closed heart. I was the one with more than enough. Then, my phone started to blow up. A constant, buzzing barrage of texts from aunts, uncles, cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. Is everything okay? Heard Mark is having a hard time. Family is everything, you know. Each message was a tiny paper cut. No one asked for my side of the story. The verdict was in. I was the cruel, wealthy sister, and my brother was the victim. A hot surge of rage washed over me, followed by a wave of crushing isolation. I wanted to scream. I wanted to hit reply all and expose every lie, every time Mark had taken advantage, every time they had enabled him. But I didn't. That night, I almost canceled, but something pushed me out the door. I went to a financial literacy workshop I'd signed up for months ago. I sat in the back of a sterile community college classroom, a total stranger. The topic on the projector felt like a sign from the universe. Protecting your assets in family disputes. The instructor was a sharp, no-nonsense woman. She spoke about turning emotional arguments into business propositions. She talked about using logic as a shield and documentation as a sword. I took furious notes. For the first time all week, I felt a flicker of control. I walked out of there with a laminated folder full of resources. It felt heavier than paper. It felt like armor. I wouldn't fight their emotional war. I would build a fortress of facts. As I dropped the folder on my kitchen counter, my phone lit up one more time. A single text. It was from Mark. Heard you're famous. See you at Grandpa's birthday dinner on Saturday? The morning after Mark's text, I didn't sit and stew in my anger. I made a phone call. I brought my neighbor, Carol, a slice of the pie she'd given me, and the whole ugly story just poured out of me. The 9 years of saving, the entitlement, the crippling tax bill, the church email. She listened patiently, her expression calm and unreadable, letting me empty all the poison out. When I finished, she tapped a thoughtful finger on her chin. My late husband was a paralegal, she said, her voice steady. He always said the person with the best documentation wins. Not the loudest, not the most righteous, the best documented. Her words lit a fire in me. It was everything I'd learned at the workshop, but hearing it from her made it real. They want to make this about family and obligation, I said, the plan crystallizing in my mind. I need to make it about facts. Exactly, Carol nodded, a small, fierce smile on her face. They want to be treated like tenants? Fine. Show them exactly what that means. My first stop was the bank. I spent 2 hours in a sterile glass office with the branch manager, requesting a full certified ledger of my main savings account for the past 9 years. I watched as he printed page after page, each one a testament to my discipline. Small, consistent deposits from my paycheck, and then the huge withdrawals for the land, the contractors, the materials. He stamped each page with an official, notarized seal. It was a 9-year history of my sacrifice, bound and verified. Next, I went home and got to work. I researched utility costs for a family of 4. I got a quote for the increase in my homeowner's insurance. I calculated the fair market rent for 2 bedrooms in my area. I typed it all up, a cold, emotionless breakdown of costs, and printed it, out next to a standard tenancy agreement I downloaded from a legal website. That afternoon, as I was organizing the papers, an email landed in my inbox that changed everything. It was from the architectural firm. They were thrilled with my freelance work. They were offering me a full-time senior designer position. The salary on the screen made me gasp. It was almost double what I was making before. It was security. It was independence. It was the final piece of armor I needed to face them without fear. I picked up the phone and called Carol. "Grandpa's 80th birthday dinner is Saturday," I said, my voice perfectly level. "They're planning to corner me." "You need a witness," she said immediately. "Will you come? As my +1? There was no hesitation in her voice. "I'll wear my good pearls." That evening, I sat at my new dining table. The notarized bank ledger, the cost breakdown, the blank tenancy agreement, the glowing job offer on my laptop. I placed each document, one by one, into a sleek professional portfolio folder. I zipped it closed. The sound was crisp, sharp, and final. I saw my reflection in the dark window. I wasn't the panicked, humiliated girl from the party anymore. "Let's go to dinner." The Italian restaurant was a whirlwind of noise. Clattering forks, loud laughter, the boisterous energy of my entire, extended family crammed around a long, checkered tablecloth table. I sat next to Carol, who looked as elegant and unflappable as she'd promised in her good pearls. We were a small island of calm in a sea of tension. At the far end of the table, my parents, brother, and sister-in-law were a thundercloud of glares and whispered comments. They waited until after the main course, just before they brought out the cake for my grandfather. This was their arena. This was the moment they had planned. My father stood, tapping his wine glass with a knife. The room quieted. "I just want to say," he began, his voice thick with a syrupy false emotion, "how wonderful it is to have the family together. And in these tough times I'm so proud to announce some good news." He paused for dramatic effect, beaming at me. "We've all pulled together, and Sarah has graciously agreed to open her beautiful new home to Mark and his family." A ripple of polite, ignorant applause went around the table. My aunts and uncles smiled at me. He was painting me as a saint while trapping me in a lie. He thought he'd won. I didn't stand. I let the applause die down. Then I calmly placed my portfolio folder on the table. The sound was quiet, but it drew every eye. "Thank you, Dad," I said, my voice clear and steady, cutting through the lingering chatter. But that's not entirely accurate. A confused murmur went through the family. My father's smile froze on his face. "I haven't agreed to anything," I continued smoothly, my gaze locked on him. "But as I said I would, I have considered the request, and I've prepared a formal response." I unzipped the folder. The sound was like a gunshot in the tense quiet. This was the first reveal. I slid a single sheet of paper across the table, so it stopped directly in front of my brother. "This is a cost breakdown," I announced to the table. "Based on the increased property taxes, insurance liability, and utility usage for 6 people, your required monthly contribution to the household would be $3,200. Mark stared at the paper as if it were written in a foreign language. His face turned a blotchy, furious red. "Rent?" He sputtered, his voice cracking. "You want to charge me rent?" "It's not rent, Mark," I corrected, my voice still perfectly level. "It's your share of the costs. I'd also require a standard tenancy agreement, a full credit check, and first and last month's contribution up front, of course." This was the second reveal. The business proposition. My mother slammed her palm flat on the table. The water glasses jumped. "This is outrageous," she shrieked, the mask of civility gone completely. "We helped you. I gave you that money for your down payment. After everything we've done, you are an ungrateful, selfish girl." The old insult. The big lie. I let her words hang in the air. I didn't respond. I just waited, letting the silence stretch, forcing everyone to look from her screaming face to my calm one. The silence became a weapon. Then, slowly, I reached into my folder. I pulled out the thick, bound bank ledger. I placed it on the table with a soft, definitive thud. The avalanche had begun. "Actually, Mom, you didn't," I said, my voice now barely above a whisper, yet it seemed to echo in the room. This is a certified and notarized statement from my bank for the last 108 months. It accounts for every single dollar that went into building my house. I flipped open the first page. It's all here. Every paycheck, every freelance deposit. There are no large cash gifts. There was no help with the down payment. I turned my gaze from my mother's stunned, pale face to my brother's. "And Mark," I said, my voice softening with a cold, sharp pity. "I know you're not destitute. I know your severance package was substantial. I saw the direct deposit notification on Dad's banking app last week when he asked me to help him transfer money online." Total, devastating silence. The lie was dismantled. The foundation of their martyrdom had turned to dust. I saw my sister-in-law, Karen, staring at Mark, her mouth hanging open in pure shock. My parents looked like they'd been turned to stone. My grandfather, who had been silent at the head of the table through the entire spectacle, slowly picked up his glass of red wine. His old hand trembled slightly as he raised it, his eyes, clear and sharp, fixed on me. His voice was raspy, but it filled the silence. "To my granddaughter, Sarah," he said, his words a final verdict. "The only one here who seems to understand the value of a dollar and the meaning of home." 3 months later, my bungalow was finally the sanctuary I had always dreamed it would be. The silence was peaceful, not lonely. The only drama was deciding which shade of blue to paint the guest room I was finally turning into my home office. I sat at my new dining table, my sleek company laptop open. I was working on my first big project for the architectural firm, the work challenging and fulfilling in a way I hadn't felt in years. That crippling property tax bill that had terrified me? It was paid in full, thanks to the signing bonus from my new job. Carol came over that evening, carrying a bottle of red wine. We sat on my porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in streaks of orange and purple. We didn't talk about my family. We talked about her prize-winning roses, about a book she was reading, about my plans for a small garden next spring. It was easy. It was real. It was chosen. I learned through the family grapevine what had happened after that night. My parents had given Mark and his family the money they had saved for their big retirement cruise. It was just enough for a deposit on a small, cramped apartment across town. My father, I heard, had to take on a part-time job as a greeter at a hardware store to make ends meet. It wasn't what I would have wished for them, but they were the consequences of their own choices. As Carol and I refilled our wine glasses, my phone buzzed on the table between us. For a second, my stomach tightened with old anxiety, but when I looked at the screen, it was a number I didn't recognize. It was a text from my aunt, my mother's sister, who had been at the birthday dinner. The message was short. "I never said it that night, but I was proud of you. Your grandfather was too." I smiled, a genuine smile that reached my eyes. I had lost one version of family, but I was building another, one based on respect, not obligation. My house was built on a foundation of concrete and wood, but my home, my real home, was being built on a foundation of boundaries. Sometimes, building a home means you have to build walls first. If you've ever had to stand up to your own family to protect your peace, I want to hear about it. Share your story in the comments below.